Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Thursday edition of GoLocal Live here in the Navigate Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm your GoLocal Live host, Rachel Nunes. Our first guest today is Dr. Alish Klein. She's here. She's one of the medical directors at the Rhode Island Department of Health and a pediatrician, and she's here to talk to us about the dangers of co-sleeping and the importance of safe sleep for infants.
Hi,
Thanks
Rachel.
so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start with co-sleeping. A lot of parents do it as a way to keep their baby near them and to feel safe both for them and for the child. But why is it so dangerous?
So at the Department of Health, we're really trying to get the word out on the safe sleep recommendations that come from the American Academy of Pediatrics. And among those recommendations are putting a baby on their back to sleep every time they sleep on a firm surface, and what we call sharing a room but not a bed. So having a baby sleep in the same room with a caregiver reduces the risk of SIDS, and sleeping on their own separate sleep surface and not on the same surface like a bed or a couch greatly reduces the chances that a baby might suffocate by accidentally being rolled over on or falling off of a surface that they're sharing.
And so you said sharing a room is good. At what point, how long should we share a room with the baby before putting them into their own room?
It's gotten a lot of attention in the press, and understandably so, because babies can be loud and noisy. Studies have shown that having a baby share the room with a caregiver in the first year of life can greatly reduce the chances of SIDS. We know that the chances of SIDS are greatest in the first 6 months. Now, the AAP recommendations do recommend that if at all possible, you share that room on a separate sleep surface for the first year of life. And if that's not possible, really critical in the first 6 months when we know the risk of SIDS is the highest.
So talking about co-sleeping, I know a lot of people say, oh, well, my mom did it, my grandma did it, they were all fine, and it keeps my baby close to me, it's easier for breastfeeding during the night. But there is that risk of the parent rolling onto the baby or the baby getting turned over. So it just should never happen.
Well, that's the goal, and we know that's not easy. Some folks have thought it over, and for cultural reasons and other reasons are intending to share a surface with their baby. Many times a caregiver is just exhausted and falls asleep and inadvertently finds themselves in that position. So, the recommendations actually call that out and say, we need to be talking to parents, we need to be talking to caregivers, and if they're feeding a baby and they're tired or exhausted, make a plan for where you're going to put that baby if you start to feel drowsy, or if you do nod off to sleep as soon as you wake up, getting the baby on their own separate sleep surface. You really do fall asleep really hard and quickly when you're sleep deprived and exhausted, and it's exhausting taking care of a newborn. So it's really the safety issue of accidental rolling onto the baby.
And is there any time where it is safe or recommended for you to share a bed with your child, or is it recommended to keep the baby separate, even as a small child?
Right. So the recommendations for a safe sleep environment are really pertaining to babies from birth to the first year of age. And so those were the studies that looked at what are some of the factors that are associated with what we call sudden unexpected infant death. That's really referring to the first 12 months of life.
So beyond that, it's okay.
Well, I think you need to look at every situation, independently, and there may be a risk for suffocation even in older infants. But when we talk about the safe sleep recommendations from the AAP, we're really focusing on those first 12 months of life.
And so talking about that safe sleep surface, there's a lot of different things that one day they'll say, yes, it's okay to have this, and then you're not supposed to have this. Yeah. And I know crib bumpers were very, very popular. They're really cute. You decorate your crib with them, but now you're not supposed to use them.
That's right. So crib bumpers and bedding like pillows, blankets, stuffed animals, soft objects are not recommended in the crib or bassinet, or if you're using a play yard. And the reason for that is, specifically with the bumpers, they haven't been proven to prevent injuries, and they have been associated with injuries and even, sadly, fatalities from a strangulation risk standpoint. So that's the reason why they're not recommended.
And so what about those blocks that seem to be popular for a while, that you kind of boxed your baby in with them so they wouldn't roll over? Is it better to just put them on the flat surface without it, or do those a risk as well?
Right, so what you're referring to are what we call wedges. I feel like they were a little more popular maybe 10 or 15 years ago, and they were meant to keep a baby on their back when you place them down. But we also know that they can wiggle up, they can pose a strangulation or suffocation risk if they come up close to the face. And there have been, nationally, there have been accidental injuries and deaths associated with wedges. So again, not recommended. Put your baby on their back to sleep. That's the recommendation.
And so why the back and not the side, just for the risk of rolling?
No, actually. So studies of sudden infant death syndrome that went on in the 70s and 80s revealed that babies were less likely to die of SIDS if they were placed in the back position, meaning that the studies show that babies placed on their stomachs were more likely to die of SIDS. And later on, that research showed that even the side position was not as safe as putting babies on their backs. Now, we have a lot of theories, but we don't know exactly what causes SIDS, which is an unexplained death of a baby under a year old. What we do know is that back position is protective.
And so a lot of parents will say, oh, well, I think he looks cold laying there all by himself, just in an empty crib with just a sheet. What can we do to make sure that the temperature is regulated as well if we don't have the option of blankets?
Great. So you raise a good point, because one of the safe sleep recommendations is to avoid overheating in babies. But we also know that very small and young babies can be susceptible to low body temperatures. So the recommendation is to set the room temperature to what an adult would be comfortable in, and dress the baby in what an adult is comfortable in, plus one extra light layer. Now, a good option in lieu of puffy blankets would be something called a blanket sleeper, which includes the legs, can be zipped up, the arms can be free, or sometimes swaddled in very young babies. But it reduces the risk of strangulation if that blanket gets loose.
And the same with stuffed animals as well. I know a lot, as a child gets older, they'll often have a toy or those pacifiers with an attached stuffed animal for soothing. Is that ever okay? Is it okay to put your baby to sleep with a pacifier?
Right. So really, you want to follow safe sleep recommendations, which talk about when a baby is sleeping, so for naps and for bedtimes, you want to reduce the risk of any kind of suffocation or strangulation hazard. So that would include things like anything with strings, any puffy objects that the baby could roll over into. Some parents have that concern that the crib or the sleep surface, it just doesn't look fun. I want to see these items in there. And it's okay to have them in there when the baby is awake and supervised, but when you put that baby down for a nap or to sleep at night, just take them out and have a nice place to keep them while the baby is sleeping.
And so this isn't a new issue. It's been brought up a lot. I know about a year ago, you and DCYF were in the news for teaming up to come up with some ideas of what can be done to help decrease the numbers. And where are we now? Have the numbers gone down? Are more people aware? What's been done?
Right. So you are correct. About a little over a year ago, we started what we called the Interagency Safe Sleep Work Group. So it was staff from the Department of Health, DCYF, the Office of the Child Advocate. And what we first did was we looked around the country and we said, how are other states getting the word out? How are they getting the message to parents and caregivers? And we created a work plan, and we started training professionals who have close contact with children, DCYF staff, our family and home visiting staff, our WIC staff, early intervention. So we've really tried to reach out in that way. We've also been trying to raise awareness by working with each one of the 5 birth hospitals and working to get them materials in the forms of family-friendly handouts with nice pictures, but also giving out a board book. And I wish I had brought one with me, but it's a board book. It's a rhyming book about safe sleep. It's called Sleep Baby Safe and Snug. It's been used in some other parts of the country, and it's actually been studied and shown that it does have some impact on caregiver knowledge and even some behavior as well around safe sleep. When you ask about the numbers and where do we stand, sadly, we do have deaths in Rhode Island every year due to sleep-related deaths. And again, we're talking about babies under 1 year of age. We have seen since 2012 until now, we've seen about 5 to 9 cases of such deaths per year. And we are a small state, and sometimes it takes many years to be able to take a step back and see if what we're doing as an intervention is helping. So because of that, it's really hard to look on a year-to-year basis, and we kind of look in these 5-year snapshots. We're really hopeful that what we're doing will get the word out and that we will start to see a reduction in these fatalities.
Over time, has there been a gradual decrease, looking back at data from 10 years ago, 20 years ago?
Sure.
Are we on the decline?
Right. So if we look at the United States as a whole, and we compare the infant deaths from, say, 20 years ago until now, we have seen a sharp decrease in the total numbers of deaths. Now, most of those are in the category of what we call SIDS, and that's due to placing their babies on their back. So that Back to Sleep campaign was really effective. It got the word out, and people really followed and heeded that advice. So we've seen a decline. Starting about a decade or so ago, that started to level off. And what we have seen over the past 10 to 12 years is a very slow increase in those infant deaths due to suffocation, strangulation. And so that's why we really want to get the word out about the safety recommendations, especially as it pertains to that.
And so why do you think it's so hard to change people's minds? Do you think it's just a matter of, well, this is how I've always done it, or, you know, I co-slept with my first child and it was fine and he really liked the experience?
Right.
Why do you think there's so much research that shows that it's dangerous, and of course no one wants anything to happen to a child,
Right.
so why do you think it's taking so long to get there?
Well, I think the first step is knowing about the recommendations. And so the first step is getting the knowledge and getting the word out there. And then the second step is really trying to give the rationale behind those recommendations. You know, why do they exist? We do know that through public health messaging campaigns, we can change safety behavior. Look at the infant car seats and the child car seats that we use now. We weren't using those 2 or 3 decades ago. So we know that it can be effective, it can take time, and especially when it comes to taking care of babies, and especially when it comes to sleeping, there's so many challenges that new parents face, exhaustion being one of them, but also sort of, you know, cultural understanding, hearing advice from family and friends, and seeing images on social media that don't always depict safe sleep environments. So, you know, there's multiple reasons why it may be challenging to kind of change the behavior, but we're going to keep getting the word out, and that's the first step.
Absolutely.
Right.
And so I know, speaking of social media, there's been a lot of buzz lately about, I believe it's in Finland, baby boxes.
Oh, yeah.
And how you're sent home from the hospital with this large box that's full of all sorts of goodies, and then you can use that as a sleep environment.
That's right.
Do we use those in Rhode Island at all?
No, and that's a great question, because one of the first things that our Safe Sleep Work Group did was take a look around not only our country but other countries, and take a look at what we might want to do here. So baby boxes are literally a cardboard box that usually can accommodate an infant in the first few months of life as a safe sleep item. They can be costly, believe it or not, and there's still studies going on as to whether or not they actually reduce the risk of SIDS or sudden unexpected infant death. Because of their cost, what we've done here is we've actually tried to promote local agencies to become affiliated with a national organization called Cribs for Kids, where they can purchase discounted play yards for slightly more than the baby box, which can accommodate a child even up to the age of 2 or 3. So the jury is out as to whether or not the baby boxes will be effective in this country in reducing infant deaths. But in the meantime, we here in Rhode Island thought that it was probably wiser to promote folks towards another product that would last longer, that we do know is a safe product to use.
Great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come in with us. It's a lot of really interesting information, and of course so important to get the word out there and to hopefully prevent any more deaths.
So back to sleep, share a room, not a bed, and try to have no objects in the baby's safe sleep environment.
They aren't cold, they're safe.
That's right.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Alish Klein, for taking the time to speak with us today. We really appreciate it. Okay. And we'll be right back in just a minute with our next guest here on GoLocal Live in the Navigate Credit Union Broadcast Center.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Navigate Credit Union Broadcast Center. We're here now with Chris Wye. He is the youth director at Renaissance Church, and he's here to talk to us about the Trinity Square Block Party coming up in just a few days. Right. Thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So tell us about the event. It's not too far from here.
Yeah. So Trinity Square is a section of Providence comprising basically a small section of Broad Street, and our event is going to be happening right at the Southside Cultural Center over on Broad Street next to the Methodist Church and across from Grace Cemetery. So yeah, it's a block party. We're celebrating the cultural diversity of Trinity Square. We think Trinity Square is a neighborhood that's sometimes overlooked in Providence, but is filled with great cultural diversity, lots of awesome kinds of food, sort of some hidden gem restaurants, and a neighborhood full of families with kids, so there's going to be a lot to offer for kids and families as well.
So tell us a little bit about some of these activities. What can we expect at the party?
Yeah, so for kids there's going to be a bouncy house. Kids love bouncy houses.
Who doesn't love bouncy houses?
I love bouncy houses. Yeah, so there's going to be games with prizes for kids. There'll be some water games to cool off. It is a rain or shine event.
Looks like it might be rain, yeah, unfortunately.
There might be a little bit of rain, but we're going to have fun regardless. Could turn into a duck party. But yeah, so there's going to be water games, different prizes for kids to win, live music. We have some really awesome local artists, C.D. Maega, world-renowned hand drummer. some Afrobeat artists. So it should be an awesome event, rain or shine. There's also going to be a table section with local nonprofits who are going to have tables set up with the services that they offer. So
Wonderful.
yeah.
And for food, can we expect a lot of local vendors to be there as well?
Yeah, so the way it's looking is there will be several vendors who probably have samples of food. And then they're going to be offering discounts for those who are in attendance. So if you come out to the block party, you'll probably most likely get a coupon from a vendor of your choice, and that coupon will be good for a percentage off at the actual restaurant itself, which will be within walking distance of the event. And then we're also going to have 200 free meals for children under the age of 18. So it's part of Providence lunch program, and so there'll be plenty of food for the kids.
Wonderful, and it sounds like a great way to not only have some fun, but encourage people to experience different restaurants and different businesses around the area as well.
Totally. We're definitely trying to celebrate that portion of the city in a way that sort of brings attention to sort of the beauty in a section that's oftentimes overlooked. So.
And is there any charge to attend the event, and can anyone go?
Yeah, the event is absolutely free. Everyone is welcome to go. It's open to not just those neighbors in and around the Trinity Square area, but also for all of Providence. So if you're asking yourself, what is Trinity Square? Just want to invite you out.
Go check it out.
Go check it out. Come check it out on Saturday at the Southside Cultural Center on Broad Street. So.
And what are the hours for this event?
The hours are from noon to 4.
Okay.
So yeah, we have musical acts scheduled throughout that time. But yeah, we'll start right at noon and then end at 4.
Wonderful. And of course, the all-important parking. Will there be parking available or off-site?
Yeah, so there's a good amount of street parking off-site. Typically, the neighboring streets off of Broad Street have plenty of parking in and around them. So parking shouldn't be an issue. But we also want to encourage people to walk or ride bikes. In fact, Recycle a Bike is going to be having a little setup there to repair bikes and broken inner tubes and things like that. So we want to encourage everyone to bike and walk out to the event if possible. If not, there'll definitely be some street parking available to you as well.
This time of year, it's definitely the perfect weather to go out for a walk or ride your bike or encourage your kids to get out. It's a great time of year for that.
Totally.
And so tell us a little bit, are there any other events coming up at the Southside Cultural Center anytime soon?
You'd have to check the Southside Cultural Center website for that, but I know that they are constantly having events at the Southside Cultural Center. They have a beautiful theater in there, so anyone who's looking to utilize their space to promote their own events, they're usually really amicable to sort of relationships in the area for performers and artists and things like that. So can't tell you exactly what the events are, but I'm sure that there'll be some employees of the Southside Cultural Center there who can let you know if you come out to the event.
And so you're affiliated with the Renaissance Church,
Yeah.
and that's located right down in that area?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we're right up on Broad Street across from Crossroads. We've been there for I think a little over 3 years now in that location. So it's a beautiful part of the city. We really enjoy it. It's right across from 3 high schools, Classical, Central, and the Tech School. And so we couldn't be happier in the location that we're at. The neighbors are awesome, and it's a nice part of the city.
And this block party, is this your first? Is it an annual tradition that happens?
Yeah. So actually, the block party is put up by something called the Trinity Square Working Group. And this is a group of nonprofits and local businesses from the Trinity Square area. This is the first time we're doing a block party like this, so we're really excited to sort of lay the foundation for celebrating Trinity Square with a block party that it deserves. Yeah, we've been meeting for about a year, just local nonprofits and businesses as part of this Trinity Square working group, people that are passionate about Trinity Square getting the recognition it deserves, and also the residents being proud of the place where they live, because it is a neat part of the city. So.
And what would you tell to someone who maybe wasn't sure about going? What would you say to convince them that this is the perfect way to spend your Saturday afternoon?
Yeah. Well, it's the perfect way to spend your Saturday because there's something for everyone. So if you're into music, there's live music. If you're looking for some of the resources available to Providence, if you're someone who has a passion for social justice and things like that, then there's going to be tables with local nonprofits and organizations offering their services and basically promoting the things that they provide. And then if you have kids, I think that's one of the big sells too. We're going to entertain your kids for 4 hours. And
free babysitting.
Free babysitting, free freeze pops for the kids, so you got to come out to that. Just drop your kids off even. It's going to be a sectioned off part, a kids zone with kids workers from the church. And so we're really excited to just offer something for everyone, really.
Well, it sounds like a whole lot of fun,
yeah.
And hopefully, fingers crossed that the rain holds off for you, but if not, I'm sure it'll be just as fun. Playing in the summer rain's a lot of fun, too.
Yeah, it's going to be fun regardless, I think. Yeah.
For sure. Well, thanks so much for coming in. Chris Wise, the youth director at Renaissance Church, here to tell us all about the Trinity Block Party coming up this Saturday, 12 to 4. You don't want to miss it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Rachel.
And we'll be right back with our next guest here on GoLocal Live. Welcome back to GoLocal Live here in the Navigate Credit Union Broadcast Center. We're here with our last guest of the hour, Vincent Jordan. He is the author of the newly released book, The Rebel Marcus Madison. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you in. So tell us a little bit about your book.
The Rebel is it's a book that picks up on many of the issues that are happening today. Marcus Madison is a average college student, and he runs into pretty much a debacle that happens with his life, and it picks up on many of the things that happens in the particularly African American community, police violence and brutality. So it really gets it takes many of the issues that we're having today and it fictionalizes many of the current issues, so people will recognize a lot of what's happening in it.
And what inspired you to write the book now?
Current events and some of the things that are happening today that many of the young people are seeing happened to me, happened to many of the people of my era. I'm of a different generation, and the Black Lives Matter movement, many of the kids in the Black Lives Matter movement, but many of these issues are older than we like to believe. And some of the issues that we need, some of the things that we need to do to resolve them are, have been spoken about for many years. And in this book, we try to take some of the solutions and house them in the mouths of many different characters to give it, to try to make it entertaining.
And can you speak a little bit to some of those solutions you referenced?
Well, one of the things that that kind of hounds Marcus is he witnesses his parents being killed. Yeah, and so in that we have to deal with a matter of how do you deal with post-traumatic stress. And so there's there are, I don't want to give too much of the book away, but there are several characters in many situations where he deals with that post-traumatic stress situation, and that takes us into the world of mental illness.
Another hot button issue at this time.
Another hot button issue. So what ends up happening is there are many different factions that raise around the issue, and we have to resolve that at some point in our society, if we don't really get a handle on matters like this, people will start taking matters into their own hands. And Marcus is a voice for a reason, and he tries to take this situation, this tragic situation, and try to teach people how to deal with it in a way that's more, in a way that's less violent, and that's part of what happens in the book.
And what do you hope to achieve? Do you hope to educate a wider people? Do you hope to inspire change? What was your goal when you wrote this?
To raise awareness of this issue, that this is not a new issue. This is not a new matter. It's a retread. This is something that's been happening since to African American communities since we've come to this country. But it's not just the African American community. It's a social issue. And I think that as a country, we're much better than the way we've been behaving in the last few years. And Marcus, this book speaks to that.
Do you think any progress is being made? There have been, for years now, so many different movements following the civil rights movement, and then in the last few years, the Black Lives Matter movement has really reignited a national conversation. Mm-hmm. Do you think enough is being done? Do you think we're making progress?
Wow. I think we have to understand how we in this country tend to define progress. And so in some ways the answer is yes. There's more conversation, open conversation about the issue. So whenever you can have an open conversation about a complex issue, that's progress. Have things changed greatly? No, they haven't. If you look at, if you just go back in the history of the country and see how we deal with people of minority communities, and how the criminal justice system wrestles with the issue of trying to be fair to a people who was never really designed to be fair to, the answer is both yes and no. So yes, we have changed some things, and it's gotten better in many ways, but the underlying premise is still there, and it won't be until we can have a serious, honest, open discussion about it that we can resolve the matters, I believe.
Do you believe in the current political climate that there's a forum for that kind of an open discussion and progress could be made, or?
I do. I think America, the beauty of America is that there's always an opportunity to have an open discussion, as opposed to a country where, just having an open discussion can land you in jail if not killed. And that's one of our shining lights, that we can actually criticize our president. We can criticize our opposition without fear of somebody dragging you out and shooting you in the middle of the street and getting away with it. And so, yes, in short answer, yeah, I think we can. It's a good time to have the discussion.
It's really never a bad time to talk about positive change.
Yeah, I think so.
And so can you tell us a little bit about, this isn't your first book, can you tell us a little bit about some of your other works?
Well, yes, I wrote a book called Let Meditation Be Your Medicine. I'm a martial artist. I started martial arts when I was a kid, and it just never leaves you. You know, I spent a great deal of my life in the medical community. So I'm also a healthcare professional for some years. I dealt primarily with professional and collegiate athletes, mostly performance enhancement stuff. So I write about that, but you know, that's what I did, is not who I am. So I have a fiction side of me that issues and characters are raving to come out, and so I wrote a book. I wrote several books about that, and I have a book about some prose and poetry. I was always a writer. I just never had an opportunity to really do it. You know, as a writer, people like what you write, but it's hard to make a living at it.
It is, and it's very easy to have an idea, but it takes a lot longer to formulate that into a complete finished work, I'm sure.
It is. It is. It is. So.
And speaking of that, what do you enjoy most about writing?
Oh, wow. Characters. Developing a creative way to express what you're thinking. In writing, in fiction I'm speaking about right now, because in writing characters of fiction, you have an opportunity to say so many things that can impact the lives of other people. You can give people an out, a way to think, a way to reason, a way to disagree, and it all comes through something else. So you're not punished or penalized because of it. It's that kind of way. It's that kind of fantasy that gives way for new concepts and new ideas to be born. And then there's poetry. It is also just an artistic release, but just the way the English language works. I write primarily in English, and the way English has evolved, just on the back of other cultures and other languages, it allows you to be able to say so many things with a simple word, a simple phrase.
That's a beautiful, beautiful way of putting it. And on what you said about characters, that brings up the interesting point of a lot of times with these really hot button issues, people tend to get very emotional and they don't really want to listen to what the other person is saying. But the beautiful thing about a book is you're not just being lectured, you're really seeing it through their eyes. And it's a good opportunity to experience someone else's experience and maybe change your mind that way, see things in a new light.
I agree with that. I agree with that. I think that often we'll get caught up in the emotion of an issue and we lose track of reason. It's difficult to make a rational decision when all of your emotions are in your way. I always say that emotion has a way of clouding the judgment. So we have a place for it, but when you write, let me speak for me, I can't say for all people, but when I write in fiction, I often can give characters an opportunity to express things in ways that may connect with a reader that I may not be able to do. I may not be comfortable doing openly, publicly, as Vincent Jordan. But a character can say so much.
That's absolutely true, and I think that's one of the greatest things about books is that sense of escapism you were talking about, of being able to lose yourself in someone else's story, and then, like I said before, see things through a different perspective.
Yes, I agree with that.
And so, circling back to these big issues that we're trying to tackle through this book, what do you think most urgently needs to be changed, needs to be addressed first of all? What do we need to do as a country?
I think we need to have an opportunity to really express what we really think to each other in ways that that doesn't cause an uprising, I believe. I think that one of the things that we tend to be afraid of is actually saying what's on our mind. We have so much spin. We have many ways to say something that we don't mean. And I think if we have an opportunity to really express what we think, then we have a better handle on how we want to resolve an issue. But right now, we talk past the issue, we talk around the issue, but we really don't get to the meat and bones of what people actually think about something, particularly when it deals with issues of race. It's a sore that doesn't heal, in the body of America, and we should actually have a rooted discussion in it, and that's one of the things that I like about the way I was able to work with through this character, Marcus Madison. They discuss real issues in real ways. So the language is it's clean, but it's deep. It talks about the things that we don't want to talk about.
Because we really need to, or we won't get anywhere. Like you said, if we keep avoiding issues and looking past them and trying to minimize them, then we aren't going to make substantive change. And clearly, that really needs to be done, because so many people across the country are all expressing the same emotion of this isn't enough, this isn't right.
This is so. I agree. You don't know what I think unless I tell you. You can speculate, and that gets us into trouble. You can speculate, you can ruminate, but you really don't know. And in order for me to really have you understand what I'm thinking, I have to be honest first with myself, and then I have to be honest with you. If I care to express that with you, in hopes that we can find some kind of meaningful change. And Marcus Madison, the rebel, tackles that issue.
And so why is he called the rebel, Marcus Madison?
Well, because he's a rebel. he takes on an issue that, in a way, that is rebellious. He becomes a vigilante, and vigilantes, when you think of them, you think Batman. He's a vigilante.
You think out in the West.
Yeah.
Dark hat facing off against a sheriff.
Yeah, very, very much so. But when you think about it, Batman is a vigilante. Batman does stuff that's absolutely against the law.
Very,
we love it.
very against the law.
He takes matters into his own hands. Well, Marcus takes matters into his own hand, but he tries as hard as he can to stay within the confines of the teachings of his parents, who were very law-abiding citizens. And so that in and of itself is a struggle. Often it's easier to get a positive result by doing the wrong thing. But we agree in our society that that's not how we're going to proceed. And that throws him into the category of a rebel.
So that plays into a little bit another hot topic discussion that's been getting a lot of buzz lately. The whole idea of just because it's a law doesn't mean it's just, and therefore you can justify not following that law because I need to change it, and so I'm going to break this law because it's not right.
Well, that kind of civil disobedience is rooted in our Constitution. We left, well, not necessarily my ancestors, I guess a few of them were my ancestors, but many people came to this country because they rebelled against, the British and the way they were living, and then they had to do it again here, and with a war. So the people make the laws, and we agree to abide by them. And often, if you find yourself in a minority position, you don't have enough of a voice to actually articulate how the laws should really affect you. There's not enough of you, particularly when we're dealing in a country like the United States, which is a democracy. Actually, we're a representative democracy. But, when you think of it, if you're in a minority community and you've only been in a minority community your whole existence here, you've never really seen things go your way most of the time. They're always at the behest of the majority. So if slavery is legal, and it was legal.
It was.
Is it correct? Is it a righteous law? Is it a good law? Well, it's a good law because the people said it was.
That's very true. It's a great example of laws that people broke in the name of justice.
Mm-hmm. And so the people who make the laws have to at some point decide, we're going to change this. And that takes patience in a democratic system, because you have to often live under rules that are not in your best interest.
Well, absolutely fascinating conversation, and I'm sure all of these topics are explored much more further in your book. It sounds completely fascinating.
Oh, thank you.
And thanks so much for coming in, talking to us today about these difficult topics and the importance of talking about them, which is in some ways half the battle.
Well, thank you for having me.
We really appreciate it.
Benson
Jordan, he's here with his book, The Rebel, Marcus Madison. Thanks so much. And that does it for us today. Kate will be back tomorrow at noon with her kickoff to the weekend show. Until then, you can keep up to date on everything news in Rhode Island, golocalprov.com. Here in the Navigate Credit Union Broadcast Center, I'm your Go Local Live host, Rachel Nunes.